Pregnant and alone, Martha sat by the river with only the clothes on her back and the uncertainty of what lay ahead. Her supposed friend Edward had betrayed her, selling her to bandits and leaving her to an unknown fate. No friends, no family, just a future shrouded in fear and doubt. She was led away by the bandits, her heart heavy with despair. But then, from the shadows, a Lakota warrior emerged, steady, strong, and watching her closely. She thought she had lost everything, but destiny had a different plan. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from, and subscribe if you believe that fate always finds a way. Martha sat on the wooden chair by the window of her small cabin. The sun was low in the sky, casting long shadows across the room. She sewed quietly, her hands moving in a familiar rhythm. Each stitch in the baby blanket carried a hope for the future, a future she had once imagined with her husband. But he was gone now, and Martha was alone, except for the life growing inside her. The cabin was simple but sturdy. It stood on the edge of a small settlement, surrounded by fields and a few other homes. Martha had lived here since her marriage. It was supposed to be a place of happiness and new beginnings. But life had taken a different path when her husband died, leaving her with memories and promises of a better life from Edward, a friend she thought she could trust. Edward had been her husband's friend. After her husband's death, Edward promised to help her. He spoke of a better life, a new start. Martha believed him because she wanted to believe that someone cared. She sewed the blanket, thinking of the child she would soon hold, hoping for peace. As the day faded, Martha stepped outside to feed the chickens. The air was cool, and the sky was painted in shades of orange and pink. She scattered the feed, watching the chickens peck at the ground. It was a small task, but it filled the quiet moments. Then, she heard the sound of horses. She turned and saw them coming, men on horseback, their faces hard and determined. There were 4 of them, led by a man with a scar across his face. Her heart quickened, fear creeping in. She knew these were not friendly visitors. The men rode up to the cabin, dust rising from the ground. Martha stood frozen, unsure of what to do. The man with the scar dismounted, his eyes cold and calculating. He walked towards her, and she backed away instinctively. "What do you want?" Martha asked, trying to keep her voice steady. The man didn't answer. Instead, he grabbed her arm, pulling her roughly towards the horses. Martha struggled, panic setting in. She called out for help, hoping someone would hear her. From the cabin, Edward emerged. For a moment, Martha felt a flicker of hope, but that hope vanished when she saw the look on his face. He walked slowly, his head down, avoiding her eyes. She realized then that he was not here to save her. The man with the scar let go of her arm and turned to Edward. Martha watched, her heart sinking, as Edward spoke. His words were quiet, but the betrayal was loud in her ears. Edward handed something to the man, silver coins. Martha understood in that moment what was happening. She wasn't being taken by force. She was being sold. Her mind struggled to process the betrayal as she was pulled towards a horse. "Edward, please," she pleaded, desperation in her voice. But Edward didn't look at her. He turned away, leaving her to the mercy of the bandits. Martha felt tears in her eyes as she was lifted onto a horse. Her hands were tied, and she was powerless to stop them. The bandits mounted their horses, and they began to ride away from the cabin, away from everything she knew. As the distance grew, Martha looked back one last time. Edward stood by the cabin, watching them go. He turned and walked inside, closing the door behind him. It was as if she had never existed. The ride was rough, the bandits' laughter harsh in the quiet evening. Martha felt the reality sink in. She was alone, betrayed by someone she trusted, carrying a child into an uncertain future. Fear and anger mixed inside her, but she knew she had to stay strong for her baby. The bandits spoke among themselves as they rode, ignoring her presence. Martha listened, trying to understand what would happen next. She was surrounded by strangers, her future now in their hands. The sun dipped below the horizon, and darkness settled over the plains. Martha shivered in the cool night air. She closed her eyes, trying to block out the fear, trying to find some small piece of hope to hold on to. She thought of her child, the baby blanket she had left behind, her husband's memory. She had to survive for both of them. As they rode on, Martha realized she had no choice but to wait for whatever came next. She was no longer in control of her life, but she was determined to find a way back. Even in the darkness, she clung to the hope that somehow she would see the dawn again. The night was long and cold as the bandits rode across the plains. Martha sat slumped on the horse, her hands bound, her spirit weary. She tried to keep her balance as the horse moved beneath her, but every step was a reminder of how far from home she was. Her mind drifted to memories of her late husband, the life they had planned together. Those memories felt like a dream now, far away and unreachable. The bandits spoke little to her, treating her more like cargo than a person. They laughed and joked among themselves, their words harsh in the night air. Martha listened, trying to understand their intentions. She heard them argue over who would keep her, their voices filled with cruel anticipation. She shivered, not just from the cold. Martha's thoughts wandered to Edward and his betrayal. She had trusted him, believed in his promises. Now, his actions felt like a stab in the back, leaving her alone and vulnerable. She couldn't understand why he had done it, why he had sold her like a piece of property. Her mind was a storm of emotions, betrayal, fear, anger, all swirling inside her. The bandits continued to ride, the landscape around them shifting from open plains to sparse woods. The trees cast long shadows in the moonlight, creating a world that felt both eerie and endless. Martha tried to focus on the sounds of the night, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of an owl, anything to distract her from the situation. They finally stopped near a river, the sound of water rushing over rocks filling the air. The bandits dismounted, pulling Martha roughly from the horse. Her feet hit the ground hard, and she stumbled, but they didn't care. She was led to a spot near the water, her hands still tied. The bandits set up a makeshift camp, building a fire to ward off the chill. Martha sat by the river, her eyes on the water, trying not to think about what might happen next. She felt a sense of helplessness, a feeling she hadn't known before. She was far from the life she knew, surrounded by danger. The bandits argued as they prepared their camp. Tensions ran high, and a fight broke out between two of them over something trivial. Martha watched, her heart pounding, as fists flew and harsh words were exchanged. The leader, the man with the scar, intervened, breaking up the fight with a commanding presence. Martha glanced around, hoping for some sign of escape, but there was none. She was trapped, both physically and by the weight of her circumstances. She thought of her child, growing inside her, and knew she had to stay strong. She couldn't let despair win. As the night deepened, the bandits settled down, their voices fading into the background. Martha felt exhaustion creep in, her body aching from the ride, her mind heavy with worry. She closed her eyes, hoping for a moment of peace, but sleep was elusive. Unbeknownst to the bandits, a figure watched from the shadows of the woods. Hidden among the trees, the figure observed the scene with quiet focus. The figure moved with stealth, unseen and unheard, a silent guardian in the night. Martha felt a strange sense of being watched, a presence she couldn't quite explain. She looked around but saw nothing in the darkness. It was just the river, the trees, and the flickering firelight. Her imagination, perhaps, or a sign that something was about to change. As the fire crackled and the bandits dozed, Martha sat awake, her thoughts a tangled mess. She felt the weight of her situation pressing down on her, but somewhere deep inside, a spark of hope remained. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but she clung to the belief that somehow she would find a way through this. With a heavy heart, she leaned against a tree, trying to find comfort in its solidity. The night air was cold, biting at her skin, but she drew the blanket tighter around her shoulders, her eyes on the stars above. They seemed so distant, so far removed from the troubles of the world below. Martha thought of her husband again, of the life they had dreamed of, and she felt a pang of loss. But she also felt a flicker of determination. She couldn't change the past, but she could fight for the future, for herself and for her child. And as she sat in the darkness, she resolved to do just that. The night stretched on, each moment an eternity. The river flowed endlessly, its song a constant in the changing world. Martha listened, her heart beating in time with the water, and she waited for whatever came next. She was not defeated, not yet. The night would end, and with it, perhaps, would come a new beginning. Martha sat by the river, exhaustion heavy on her shoulders. The bandits had fallen asleep, their snores mingling with the sounds of the night. The fire crackled softly, casting flickering shadows across the ground. She kept her eyes open, watching the darkness around her, sensing something was different. A feeling in her gut told her she was not alone. The wind rustled the leaves, the night calm but alive. Suddenly, a sound came from the woods, a soft rustle, a whisper in the trees. Martha tensed, her heart quickening. She strained her ears, trying to catch any hint of danger or help. The noise came again, low and swift, unlike anything she had heard before. Without warning, chaos erupted. Figures moved in the shadows, quick and silent. Martha watched in disbelief as arrows flew through the air, striking with deadly accuracy. The bandits barely had time to react. One by one, they fell, surprise etched on their faces. Martha's breath caught in her throat. It was over as quickly as it had begun. Silence reclaimed the night, broken only by the river's steady flow. Martha sat frozen, unsure of what had just happened. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of the scene before her. The bandits lay motionless, and she was still bound, still alone. Or was she? A figure stepped from the shadows, moving with a calm, deliberate grace. Martha's eyes widened as she took in the sight. A man stood before her, tall and strong, his expression unreadable. His skin was painted with symbols, his long hair tied back. He carried a bow, now lowered, and a knife at his side. Martha felt a mix of fear and relief, unsure of what this new presence meant. The man approached slowly, his movements careful. Martha watched as he knelt beside her, meeting her gaze. His eyes were dark, holding a depth she couldn't quite fathom. He reached for her bindings, his hands steady and sure. She flinched instinctively, but he paused, waiting for her to respond. Martha took a deep breath, nodding slightly, and he began to cut the ropes. Freedom. The feeling was overwhelming as the ropes fell away. Martha rubbed her wrists, the skin raw and sore. She looked at the man, gratitude and curiosity mingling in her eyes. He had saved her, but she didn't even know his name. Her voice was shaky as she spoke, asking who he was. He answered in a low, calm voice. His name was Chaitin, a Lakota warrior. He had seen the fire and followed it here, knowing danger often followed such signs. Chaitin's voice was measured, each word carefully chosen. Martha listened, her fear slowly ebbing away. There was something about him, a quiet strength that made her feel safe. Chaitin offered her water, and she drank gratefully, the cool liquid soothing her dry throat. He tended to her wounds, gentle yet efficient. Martha watched him work, her mind still trying to process everything that had happened. He asked nothing of her, gave no demands. He was simply there, offering help without expectation. As the night wore on, Martha began to trust Chaitin. His presence was a balm to her frayed nerves, a steady anchor in the chaos of her world. She felt a flicker of hope, a small light in the darkness. For the first time since she was taken, she allowed herself to believe that she might be okay. Chaitin spoke again, offering her a choice. He could take her to safety, away from the threat of the bandits. Martha considered his offer, weighing her options. She knew she couldn't stay here, not with the danger that might return. And there was something in Chaitin's offer, a sense of freedom she hadn't felt in a long time. The decision wasn't easy, but Martha nodded, accepting his help. She would leave with him, trust him to guide her through the unknown. It was a leap of faith, but she felt it was the right one. Chaitin nodded in understanding, his expression calm and reassuring. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, they prepared to leave. Martha felt a sense of anticipation, a mix of fear and excitement. She didn't know what lay ahead, but she knew she couldn't go back to the life she had known. She was stepping into the unknown, guided by a man she barely knew, but trusted nonetheless. They moved quietly, leaving the campsite behind. Martha glanced back once, seeing the place where her life had changed forever. She turned away, focusing on the path ahead. Chaitin led the way, his movements confident and sure. Martha followed, feeling a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in a long time. The journey had begun, a new chapter in her life. Martha didn't know where it would lead, but she felt a sense of peace, a belief that she was on the right path. With Chaitin by her side, she felt stronger, more capable than she had in years. She was no longer a captive, no longer a victim of circumstance. She was free, and she intended to make the most of it. Martha followed Chaitin as they moved away from the river. The morning was new, the air fresh with the promise of a different day. She felt the weight of the night lift slightly, her mind adjusting to the changes around her. Chaitin walked ahead, his steps confident, as if he knew the land by heart. The landscape opened up before them, a mix of rolling hills and scattered trees. Martha tried to take it all in, her senses alive with the sights and sounds of their journey. She was no longer bound, no longer a captive. Her heart beat with a mix of fear and hope, the uncertainty of the path ahead both daunting and exciting. Chaitin paused briefly, turning to her. He spoke calmly, explaining the way forward. They would travel through different terrains, avoiding settlements and places where danger might lurk. His voice was steady, a source of comfort amid the unknown. Martha listened intently, nodding as she absorbed his words. They walked for hours, the sun climbing higher in the sky. The heat grew, but Martha found a rhythm in their pace. She focused on putting one foot in front of the other, allowing herself to be present in the moment. Chaitin moved with ease, his presence a constant reminder that she was not alone. As they traveled, Chaitin began to teach Martha small things. He showed her how to find water by reading the land, how to spot signs of animals, and how to move quietly through the brush. His lessons came naturally, woven into their journey. Martha found herself learning quickly, her confidence growing with each new skill. There was a moment when they paused to rest beside a stream. Martha sat on a rock, her feet sore but her spirit light. Chaitin joined her, and they shared a simple meal of dried meat and berries. The food was plain but welcome, a reminder of the simplicity that often brings contentment. While they rested, Martha felt the urge to ask Chaitin about himself. She wanted to know more about the man who had saved her, the one who had given her a chance at freedom. She asked him about his past, about what had brought him to that river on that particular night. Chaitin's answer was thoughtful and measured. He spoke of his tribe, the Lakota, and the life he had known before. He shared a story of betrayal and loss, a time when those he trusted had chosen their own gain over the good of the community. Martha listened, understanding the pain in his words. She realized they shared a common bond, both were shaped by betrayal, yet not defined by it. Their journey continued, stretching into the afternoon. They moved through valleys and along ridges, their path guided by Chaitin's instinct and knowledge. Martha found herself growing more comfortable with each passing hour. The fear that had gripped her began to loosen its hold, replaced by a sense of purpose. As the sun began to set, they found a place to camp for the night. Chaitin showed Martha how to gather wood and build a small fire. Together, they prepared a simple meal, working in a quiet harmony that felt natural and right. The fire crackled softly, the warmth a welcome embrace against the cooling air. Martha sat by the fire, her thoughts drifting to the life she had left behind. She thought of her husband, of Edward's betrayal, and of the child she carried. The world she had known was gone, but in its place was a new beginning. She felt a sense of resolve, a determination to create a life on her own terms. Chaitin broke the silence, asking her about her life before. Martha hesitated at first, unsure of how much to share. But she found herself speaking openly, telling him of her husband, of the dreams they had shared, and of the loss that had changed everything. She spoke of Edward, of the trust shattered by his actions, and of the fear that had followed. Chayton listened without judgment, his presence a quiet support. He understood the weight of her words, the emotions tied to each memory. Martha felt a sense of relief in sharing her story, a release of the burden she had carried alone. That night, she lay beneath the stars, the fire's warmth beside her. She felt a peace she hadn't known in a long time, a sense of belonging that had been absent since her husband's death. Chayton was nearby, a steadfast presence in the darkness. Martha realized that she was beginning to heal. The fear and anger were still there, but they no longer defined her. She was finding strength in the journey, in the knowledge that she was capable of more than she had ever imagined. The path ahead was still uncertain, but she felt ready to face it. As sleep claimed her, Martha knew she was not alone. She had found an ally in Chayton, a guide and a friend. Together, they would continue their journey, each step a testament to her resilience and will. Martha was beginning to see herself not as a victim, but as a survivor, a woman with the power to shape her own destiny. Martha woke to the sound of birds singing in the early morning light. The sky was a soft blue, the world waking up around her. She stretched, feeling the stiffness in her muscles from the previous day's journey. Chayton was already awake, tending to the small fire from the night before. He nodded to her as she sat up, offering a simple greeting. They packed up their camp quickly, moving with practiced ease. Martha was learning to do things she had never done before, like packing the supplies and making sure nothing was left behind. There was a rhythm to their mornings now, a routine that brought a sense of order to her life. The day promised to be warm, the sun rising higher as they set off. Their path led them through more diverse terrain, the land changing from grassy fields to rocky hills. Martha walked with a purpose, her steps more confident than they had been. She felt the strength in her legs, the endurance that was building with each day. They traveled in comfortable silence, the bond between them growing stronger. Martha found comfort in Chayton's presence, a solid reassurance that she was not alone. She was learning to navigate this new world, to find her place in it. The journey was becoming less about escape and more about discovery. As noon approached, dark clouds began to gather on the horizon. They moved quickly, bringing with them the promise of rain. Chayton paused, surveying the sky with a critical eye. He spoke quietly, suggesting they find shelter before the storm hit. Martha agreed, feeling a twinge of anxiety at the thought of being caught in the open. They quickened their pace, searching for a place to wait out the weather. Martha could feel the air change, the wind picking up and swirling around them. It wasn't long before they found a small cave nestled in the side of a hill. It was dry and safe, a perfect refuge from the coming storm. As they settled inside, the first drops of rain began to fall. The sound grew louder, a steady rhythm against the earth. Martha watched as the rain cascaded down, grateful for the shelter. It was a reminder of how quickly things could change, how unpredictable the world could be. The storm raged outside, but inside the cave they were safe. Chayton lit a small fire, the warmth a welcome comfort in the cool, damp air. Martha sat beside it, her thoughts drifting as she listened to the rain. The sound was soothing, a lullaby that eased her worries. Chayton spoke, his voice low and steady. He talked about the storms he had seen, the power they held, and the lessons they taught. Martha listened, finding wisdom in his words. She realized that the storm was a metaphor for her own life, the chaos that had uprooted her and the calm that followed. They spent the afternoon in the cave, waiting for the storm to pass. Martha felt a sense of peace, a calm she hadn't expected. She was beginning to understand that life was not about avoiding the storms, but about learning to dance in the rain. Her journey was teaching her resilience, the ability to stand firm in the face of adversity. As the rain began to let up, they prepared to move on. The world outside was fresh and clean, the storm leaving behind a new beginning. Martha felt a renewed sense of purpose as they stepped back into the open, the path ahead clear and bright. Their journey continued, the land lush and vibrant after the rain. They crossed a river, the water swift and cool. Martha hesitated at first, the memory of the river by the bandit camp still fresh in her mind. But with Chaitin's guidance, she found her footing and crossed safely to the other side. Each challenge they faced brought new lessons, new strengths. Martha found herself growing more capable, more aware of her own power. She was learning to trust herself, to rely on her instincts. The fear that had once consumed her was fading, replaced by a quiet confidence. As evening approached, they found a sheltered spot to camp. The air was crisp, the sun setting in a blaze of color. Martha helped gather wood, her movements sure and steady. She felt a sense of accomplishment, a pride in her ability to contribute. That night, they sat by the fire, the warmth a comfort against the night chill. Chaitin shared stories of his people, their traditions and beliefs. Martha listened, fascinated by the richness of his culture. It was a world she had never known, yet she felt a connection, a respect for the way they lived. Martha shared more of her own story, her voice steady and strong. She spoke of her hopes for the future, the dreams she still held close. Chaitin listened, his presence a quiet support. He understood the journey she was on, the transformation that was taking place. Their bond deepened, a friendship forged in shared experiences and mutual respect. Martha felt a warmth in her heart, a sense of belonging that had been missing for so long. She was no longer just surviving. She was living, each day a step towards a new life. As she lay beneath the stars, the fire's glow fading, Martha thought of the path ahead. It was still uncertain, but she felt ready to face it. With Chaitin by her side, she was not afraid. She was learning to embrace the journey, to find strength in the challenges and joy in the small victories. The night was quiet, the world at peace. Martha closed her eyes, her mind calm. She was finding her way, one step at a time, and she knew she was not alone. Her journey was far from over, but she was ready for whatever came next. She was strong, she was resilient, and she was free. The morning sun rose, painting the sky with soft hues of pink and orange. Martha and Chaitin set off early, the air cool against their skin. They walked side by side, their footsteps in sync. The land was quiet, serene, as if holding its breath. Martha felt a sense of anticipation, a new day unfolding with promise. As they traveled, the terrain shifted, leading them to a bustling trading post. It was a place where people gathered to exchange goods, a mix of settlers and travelers. The noise and activity were a stark contrast to the solitude of their journey. Martha felt a mix of curiosity and caution as they approached. The trading post was alive with movement, the air filled with the sounds of voices bargaining and goods being exchanged. Martha kept close to Chaitin, feeling the weight of eyes on her. Her heart quickened, but she held her head high, determined not to show her unease. They moved through the crowd, stopping to look at items laid out for trade. Chaitin spoke with a few of the traders, exchanging pleasantries and gathering information. Martha watched, taking in the sights and sounds. It was a world she had once been part of, yet now it felt foreign. As they wandered, Martha felt a chill run down her spine. She turned, her eyes scanning the throng of people. Her heart skipped a beat when she saw him, Edward, moving through the crowd, his eyes searching. He looked different, worn and anxious, but there was no mistaking him. Martha's pulse quickened, a mix of fear and anger swirling inside her. She glanced at Chaitin, who noticed her change in demeanor. He followed her gaze, his expression becoming serious as he saw Edward. Chaitin placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, a silent promise of support. Edward moved closer, his eyes locking onto Martha. She felt a surge of emotions, betrayal, hurt, but also a newfound strength. This was the man who had sold her, who had cast her aside without a second thought. She would not let him control her fate any longer. As Edward approached, the crowd seemed to fade away. It was just the two of them, facing each other. Edward stopped a few paces away, his expression a mix of surprise and something else. Perhaps guilt, perhaps regret. Martha stood tall, meeting his gaze without flinching. "Martha," Edward said, his voice carrying a note of disbelief. "I thought you were gone." She felt a tremor in her heart but steadied herself. "You thought wrong. I'm still here." Edward looked around, noticing Chayton standing beside her. His eyes narrowed, suspicion and jealousy mixing on his face. "Who is he?" Edward asked, his tone sharp. Martha didn't waver. "He is my friend. The one who saved me when you sold me to bandits." Edward's face twisted, his mask of confidence slipping. "I had no choice," he said, a hint of desperation in his voice. "There were debts. I didn't know what else to do." Martha felt a pang of the old hurt, but she pushed it aside. Edward's reasons didn't matter anymore. She had moved beyond them. "You made your choice," she said firmly, "and I've made mine." The crowd around them seemed to pause, sensing the tension. Chayton stood calmly, his presence a silent strength beside her. Martha felt the weight of her decision, the power in her words. She was not the same woman Edward had betrayed. She was stronger now, and she knew it. Edward shifted, his composure cracking. "Come back with me," he pleaded. "We can start over. I can make things right." Martha shook her head, her resolve unbroken. "I won't go back. Not to that life, not to you. I found my own path." Edward's expression hardened, anger replacing the pleading. "You'll regret this, Martha," he said, his voice low and threatening. But she was unafraid. "I already did," she replied, her voice steady. "But not anymore." With those words, she turned away from him, her back straight, her heart sure. Chayton moved with her, their steps aligned as they left Edward behind. The crowd parted, the moment passing like a ripple on the water. Martha felt a release, a weight lifted from her shoulders. She had faced her past and emerged whole, her spirit unbroken. She was free, truly free, and it filled her with a sense of peace she had longed for. As they left the trading post, Martha knew she had made the right choice. She had chosen herself, her future, and the journey she would take. With Chayton by her side, she was ready for whatever lay ahead. They walked on, the path stretching before them, open and full of possibility. Martha felt the warmth of the sun on her face, the promise of new beginnings in every step. She was no longer defined by her past, but by the choices she made, the strength she discovered within. That night, they camped under a sky full of stars. The fire crackled softly, the night air cool and gentle. Martha lay beside it, her heart light, her mind at peace. She was no longer afraid of the shadows of her past. She had faced them, conquered them, and now she walked in the light of her own making. With Chayton near, she felt a connection, a bond that had grown from shared trials and mutual respect. It was a friendship, a partnership formed in the crucible of adversity. Martha knew that whatever the future held, she was not alone. Sleep came easily, her dreams filled with hope and promise. She was ready for the next chapter, the journey that would lead her home to herself. And in the quiet of the night, she knew she would never look back. The next morning, Martha awoke with a sense of calm. The events at the trading post had given her clarity. She felt lighter, as if a burden she had carried far too long had finally been lifted. The sun was rising, casting a golden light over the land. Chayton was already awake, tending to their small fire. They shared a simple breakfast, the routine now familiar and comforting. Martha was grateful for these moments of normalcy, the quiet rituals that marked the start of each day. As they ate, her thoughts turned to the future. She had made her decision, but the path ahead was still unwritten. Chayton seemed to sense her contemplation. He spoke gently, asking if she wished to continue their journey together, or if she wanted to find her own way. His offer was sincere, his respect for her choice evident in his words. Martha appreciated his understanding, the space he gave her to decide. She thought about the journey they had shared, the trials they had faced, and the bond they had formed. Chayton had been a constant presence, a guide and a friend when she needed it most. With him, she had discovered strength she didn't know she possessed. She realized that she didn't want to continue alone. She wanted to build a future with someone who respected her as an equal. Martha spoke her mind, her voice steady and clear. She told Chaitin that she wished to stay with him, not out of necessity, but choice. She valued their partnership and the possibilities it held. She wanted to learn more about his world, to explore this new path with a sense of purpose and belonging. Chaitin listened, his expression thoughtful. He nodded, acknowledging her decision. He spoke of the journey ahead, of the Lakota lands and the life they could build together. His words painted a picture of a future filled with possibilities, one where they could both find peace and fulfillment. With their decision made, they set off once more, their steps sure and aligned. The landscape around them was vast and open, a canvas waiting to be explored. Martha felt a thrill of excitement at the thought of what lay ahead. She was no longer running from her past, but moving towards a future she had chosen. As they walked, Chaitin shared more about his people, their customs, and the land they called home. Martha listened intently, eager to learn and understand. She was fascinated by the richness of his culture, the deep connection to the earth and the community. It was a world so different from her own, yet she felt drawn to it. They traveled through valleys and across streams, the land changing as they moved further from the trading post. Martha found herself growing more comfortable with each step, her confidence building. She was learning to trust her instincts, to rely on the skills she had developed along the way. The journey was not without its challenges. They faced harsh weather and difficult terrain, but these trials only served to strengthen their resolve. Martha proved her resilience time and again, earning not only Chaitin's respect but her own. She was becoming the person she had always wanted to be, strong, capable, and free. One evening, as they rested by a river, Martha reflected on how far she had come. The woman who had left her cabin, betrayed and afraid, was not the same woman who sat by the water now. She had grown, transformed by the journey and the choices she had made. She was no longer defined by her past, but by the future she was building. Chaitin joined her, his presence a steady comfort. He spoke of the Lakota lands, of the welcome she would receive. Martha felt a warmth in his words, a promise of acceptance and belonging. It was a place where she could truly start anew, where her past would not overshadow her future. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Martha felt a deep sense of peace. She had chosen this path, embraced this journey, and it had led her to a place of hope and possibility. With Chaitin by her side, she knew she could face whatever came next. That night, they camped under the stars, the fire a gentle glow against the darkness. Martha lay beside it, her heart full. She was not the woman she had been, but someone stronger, someone who had faced her fears and emerged whole. Martha knew there would be challenges ahead, but she was ready. She had found her voice, her strength, and her purpose. With each step, she was writing her own story, one of resilience and courage. She was no longer defined by the shadows of her past, but by the light of her own making. As she drifted to sleep, Martha felt a deep gratitude for the journey that had brought her here, for the man who had walked beside her, and for the future she was creating. In the quiet of the night, she knew she was exactly where she was meant to be, on the path to freedom, a journey shared, a life reclaimed. Martha and Chaitin continued their journey through the vast landscape, each day bringing them closer to the Lakota lands. The air was fresh, the sky wide and open, and Martha felt a growing sense of anticipation. They had traveled far, and now the end of their journey was within reach. As they walked, Chaitin spoke of his home, describing the village nestled between tall bluffs and hidden by pine. He talked about the people, their traditions, and the way of life that had shaped him. Martha listened, eager to learn more about the place that might soon become her own. The landscape began to change, the earth more familiar to Chaitin and new to Martha. She felt a thrill of excitement mixed with a touch of nerves. This would be a new beginning, a chance to truly start over. She was ready, but the unknown still held its mysteries. Finally, they reached the edge of the Lakota lands. The village lay ahead, a small cluster of lodges surrounded by the beauty of nature. Martha paused, taking in the sight. It was peaceful, a place where life moved in harmony with the land. As they approached, people began to notice them. There were curious glances, but no hostility. Martha's heart beat faster, her anticipation building. She was stepping into a new world, one that held the promise of belonging and acceptance. Chaitin led her forward, his presence a steadying force. They were met by a group of elders, their expressions kind but reserved. Martha felt their eyes on her, weighing her presence, assessing her intentions. She took a deep breath, ready to speak for herself. Martha stepped forward, meeting their gaze with quiet confidence. She spoke simply, without embellishment. She told them she sought not to take, but to learn and belong. She asked for a place among them, not as an outsider, but as someone willing to embrace their way of life. The elders listened, their expressions thoughtful. They asked questions, seeking to understand her past and her desire to join them. Martha answered honestly, sharing her journey, the trials she had faced, and the choices she had made. She spoke of the strength she had found and the future she wished to build. Chaitin stood by her side, his silent support a testament to their shared journey. The elders took his presence into account, recognizing the bond between them. They spoke quietly among themselves, considering her request. After a moment, one of the elder women nodded, her eyes meeting Martha's. She spoke of the importance of choosing one's path, of the strength it took to break free and seek a new beginning. She acknowledged Martha's courage, her willingness to embrace change and the unknown. The elders conferred, and then one of them stepped forward. He welcomed Martha, not as a stranger, but as a new member of their community. He spoke of the journey ahead, the learning and growth that would come with time. Martha felt a wave of relief, gratitude filling her heart. With Chaitin beside her, Martha was introduced to the village. People came forward, offering smiles and words of welcome. She felt their curiosity but also their acceptance. It was a new beginning, a chance to build a life she had chosen. Over the next few days, Martha settled into the rhythm of village life. She learned the daily tasks, the customs and traditions that shaped their world. She worked alongside the women, finding a sense of purpose in the simple tasks that filled each day. Chaitin was always near, a constant presence in her new life. They shared meals, stories, and quiet moments by the fire. Their bond deepened, a friendship that had grown into something more, a partnership built on respect and shared dreams. Martha found herself embracing this new life, the challenges and joys it brought. She felt a connection to the land, to the people, and to the future she was creating. She was no longer defined by her past, but by the choices she made each day. As the days turned into weeks, Martha felt a sense of belonging she hadn't known before. She was part of something larger, a community that valued her for who she was, not who she had been. She had found a home, a place where she could be herself. One evening, as the sun set and the village gathered for a celebration, Martha stood beside Chaitin, her heart full. The air was filled with laughter and music, the warmth of the fire reflecting the joy of the people around her. Martha looked at Chaitin, a smile on her lips. She knew that this was just the beginning, that their journey together was far from over. They had found each other in the midst of chaos, and together they had created a life filled with hope and promise. As the stars appeared in the night sky, Martha felt a deep sense of peace. She was no longer a woman defined by loss or betrayal. She was a woman who had found her strength, her voice, and her place in the world. Martha knew there would be challenges ahead, but she was ready to face them. With Chaitin by her side, she was not alone. They would walk this path together, each step a testament to their journey and the love they had found. The future was bright, and Martha embraced it with open arms. She was home, finally free, and ready for whatever came next. Her story was one of resilience, courage, and the power of choice. A story still unfolding, a life reclaimed. If you loved the story, like the video and subscribe.